Greetings to everyone and welcome to another session of the CBCG Friday night online fellowship meeting, better known as Go-To Meeting 1. We enjoy the company of many of the scattered brethren around the world, including Canada, USA, Australia, New Zealand, United Kingdom, Europe, and South Africa. Tonight we're going to hear from our elder in Australia, Roy Assanti, and the title of his message this evening in our world is The Spirit World, Testing and Trial 2. Roy.
Thank you, Norbert, and good evening to everyone, good morning to everyone, good afternoon, wherever you are. Yeah, the Spirit World Testing and Trial, number 2, we continue. And the last time we left it off, we talked about the angelic kingdom. And here I want to pick it up again. And my first scripture is going to be Isaiah 40. If we can look at Isaiah 40. Now, if we could draw back the curtain and have a look at history. Now, let's just imagine there was a screen there and we could actually see what really happened at a time before the creation of man, at a time when the earth itself was created. Very interesting. And I want to make a comment to the evolutionists. Today, I guess in ancient Egypt and various past civilizations, they would be bombarded with all these images and statues, and this is the god here of the sky, and this one here is of fertility, etc., etc. That's the way it was, and I guess anyone in that civilization, in civilizations like that, would have to think, no, this is not right. And so today, there is no difference. We still have another philosophy that moves contrary to the power of God and why and how we are here. And I just asked the question, we're going to go to Isaiah 40 for the first scripture. What would happen if a statue was found in the ground and it had eyes, ears, hands, feet, and someone was going to, or a body of people were going to try and convince you that just came about naturally? It naturally happened. However you want to place it, the movement of the rocks or the soil, and then there was a bit of sun, the water. I mean, how do you get fingernails, 10 fingers, 2 eyes? How do you get that? A nose, nostrils, as a stone image? The answer is it just doesn't happen. Now, likewise, the deception today is that life just happened, accident after accident. And either way, we are fighting against this indoctrination of this civilization, whether we realize it or not. It leads us into doubt. But life, how much more complex is a living organism, a living person that can see, that can think, that can hear, than just a stone image? So it is obvious, my friends, we've been made. Isaiah 40 and verse 12. Let's look at the maker, who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand and meted out the heavens with a span. Well, look at that. And who has comprehended the dust of the earth in a measure and weighed the mountains in scales? Everything's brought down to our world, what we see. And this has all had a beginning. It was made. And the hills in the balance. Verse 13. Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, and who was his counselor that we might instruct him? Verse 14. With whom did he take counsel, and who instructed him and taught him in the path of judgment So if this creation is real, his judgments, his proclamations, what he tells us, his instructions, his guidance to us, his judgments, they're real too, and taught him knowledge and made known the way of understanding to him. And we go to verse 25. To whom then will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes. Now let's get things in perspective and understand the power of the one who made us, who brings out, who's created these things. Lift up your eyes on high and behold. Have a look and have a think. Think about this. Who has created these things that you see? And who brings out their host by number, and he calls them all by names. The stars by names, by the greatness of his might, for he is strong in power. Not one fails. The universe is in place, all the stars, and they have their courses, etc., because they're held in place by God's power. Now, I'm going to go on a little sidebar here, but after that, I'm going to go to Job chapter 38. Job chapter 38. So you can be turning there. Now, I just did a quick search of the internet, and the largest star that's been measured is Canis Majoris. Let's look at the power that we're talking about. Just focus in a little bit. Now, the sun is 109 times the diameter of the earth, but Canis Majoris is estimated to be roughly 1,400 times the diameter of the sun. Can we imagine how incredibly large Canis Majoris is? Okay, now it can be inferred that the radius of Canis Majoris would have to reduce approximately 80,000 times, in order to be the same size as the Earth. And then the Earth, if we did that, the Earth's radius, if it was reduced 80,000 times, it would have the radius of 82 meters. So think about how large this body is. 82 meters compared to the size of the Earth. That's another comparison. And there's another thing. We're going to go to Job 38 now. But there's another thing that I've spoken about in the past. I'm absolutely enthralled by these figures and these things. There are more stars in the visible universe, what can be seen, right? More stars than there are grains of sand on the Earth. And that is all of the Sahara Desert, all of the deserts of America, and the internal Australia's got amazing deserts as well. Think about it, all those grains of sand. They are known, the stars, and counted by name, because his might is that great. Let's go to Job 38. That's the end of the sidebar. But I think it's important, and it is illuminating to look at God's word and just we can just read past it, or if we can seek to understand a little bit, right, and expand it, it is absolutely beyond. No wonder he says that, look up, as high as the heavens are above the earth. So is my understanding, so am I, right, above your thinking. So that is incredible. Job 38 and verse 1. Here there's a discourse and something interesting where we left off. We're going to go where we left off last time about the stars, about the angelic kingdom. Something interesting comes up in this conversation between God and Job. Job 38 verse 1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Now gird up your loins, okay, stand up, take it like a man. For I will demand of you, and you shall answer me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare it if you have understanding. Okay, so there was a time, if we could have a look at a screen and have it projected in front of us, we could see where the earth was actually made. So everything in this orb has been created and put there for a purpose. Verse 4 again, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Declare it if you have understanding. Who has determined its measurements if you know? Or who has stretched out the line upon it? On what other foundations fastened to? It has been put together. It didn't just happen. It wasn't gases that exploded and all of a sudden it cooled and, oh, there's a planet. No, it was made. Or who laid its cornerstone? Now, okay, who was it? Who was it? This is a context of time in history, a specific time. Now notice verse 7. At that time, what happened? Verse 7. When the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy. This is the angelic kingdom. And it was observed that the earth was something of beauty, of magnificence. And why? It was to become their habitation. That's why they shouted for joy. Let's go to Isaiah 46, and we'll go to Isaiah 46, verse 18. So the earth was made to be inhabited. Now, prehistory, we don't know about what happened before mankind. Man was put on the earth. There were different creatures. It was a different world. And obviously it was God's purpose there. But the purpose it's interesting because God's thing is to test, to develop character, to change. Now, Isaiah 46, verse 18 says, for thus says the Lord, the creator of heavens, again, he himself is God, who formed the earth and made it. He has established it. He created it, not in vain, not in tohu, not for nothing, not in confusion. It was created on purpose and for a reason, but formed it to be inhabited. Now that is why they shouted for joy. It was a place of habitation for them. I am the Lord and there is no other. And now, continuing with the story, something happened. Let's go to Jude 6. Jude 6. It was a testing ground, it seemed. Very little is revealed about what happened, how come, what the circumstances were. We just know the end result, where it ended. So Jude 6. Jude 6, the angels had shouted for joy and it was a place of their habitation. Jude 6, and the angels who did not keep their original domain. Okay, there was a reason they were placed there and they were not to leave. They were there for a reason, a purpose, God's purpose. And as we understand, it is testing of character. But deserted their habitation. He is holding in eternal bonds under darkness unto the judgment of the great day. And as we know, eventually there was a rebellion. We went through that last time, and it was led by Lucifer, whose name was changed to Satanas in the Hebrew, or Satan, which is competitor and enemy. That's what it means. His name was changed from bright shining morning star to competitor. And that's recorded in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28. And we covered that last time. And in Revelation 12:4, I'll just quote these scriptures. It records that a third of the angelic creation followed Satan, right, then named Satan, to in a rebellion against God. Now, there's a few takeaway observations that I'll just basically mention. Now, first, the angelic kingdom was created eternal, spiritual, brilliant, and there's no time limitation on their existence. They were created in glory and in beauty. And so what happened was that they had to be put through tests and trials. And as a result, a third ended up rebelling. Now we're going to go to John 20. Next scripture is John 20. Now, in view of this, God set out to actually reproduce himself, his character, his greatness, because he himself would never turn, has never turned, has never gone contrary, has always lived in an orderly way, has understood life and how to live life. So God set out to reproduce, and we'll go into this, reproduce himself, and in character first this time, and then adding the glory. John 20 and verse 17. So first, the righteous character now God is making with a clay model. And when that character is set, then he will add the glory. That's what we're going to go into. In John 20 and verse 17, Jesus said to her, to Mary, "Do not touch me, because I've not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren and tell them that I'm ascending to my Father." Now, he goes on to say, my Father and your Father. We all have fathers. What does that mean? There's a connection. There's an intimate connection of family. That's what father means. He says, as I am, you are. Same thing. He says, but go to my brethren and tell them that I am ascending to my Father and to your Father. What a connection that mankind, man and woman, have with God. And to my God, he's my God and your God. A spiritual family relationship. And now if we go to Revelation 21. Revelation 21. And if any do not develop this character, this way of thinking, if it's not inculcated in them, then God does not add permanence. It says in Ezekiel 18 verse 4 and 20, verse 20, that the soul that sins will die, not live. And so recorded in Revelation 21, we'll start in verse 7, the one who overcomes shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he shall be my son and daughter. Same thing. My family, be mine, part of me. However, verse 8 says, but to the cowardly, the unbelieving, the abominable, and murderers and fornicators and sorcerers, everyone that is outside of God's counsel and does not develop that godly character, idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake of fire that burns with fire and brimstone, which is what? It's the second death. Now, our purpose is to be changed. That's why we're here, to have a different heart, feeling, way of life, and mind, a different way of thinking, another way that is contrary to the way that is natural for us to think. We're given a contrary mind and heart, thinking wrong. We may have mentioned Jeremiah 17:9 and 10. Jeremiah 17:9 tells us that the heart, what is inside us, is desperately wicked and evil, wrong. And verse 10 says, God, the Lord, he weighs the heart. That's the activity. That's his thinking, to change us, to give us difficulties and trials, to change and mold and have us think different, be like him. Now this change is accomplished by testing and trials. Let's go to Matthew 19. And I wonder, Matthew 19, and then we'll go to verse 17. Matthew 19, 17. And I wonder if we were to ask the question, in the end, which way will you personally, which way will you go? Which way will I go? Which way will we go? There were those that were amongst us that understood these things, yet they turned away. They were as diligent as we are. We're there, but something happened. What happened? And the question is, will we stay the course? Matthew 19, verse 17. Who's going to enter life? Does anyone know? Do we know for sure? Well, it ain't over until it's over. Matthew 19, verse 17. And he said to him, why do you call me good? No one is good except one, God. But if you desire to enter life, if you desire to enter life, this is not life. This is a temporary, flashy existence. Before you know it, we're old and we're looking at an end. This is not life. It's a taste of life. But he says, if you desire to enter life, keep the commandments. Keep the commandments. Let's go to Genesis 1. We're going to go on a little bit of a sidebar. Genesis 1 and verse 25. Now, let's just I like to stand back every now and then and look. What's about us? What is this? What is this existence? Just take a look. You know, there are creatures around us. There are cows, there are pigs, there are eagles, there are pigeons. You know, all are programmed in a certain manner to act, to live in a certain way. They're all programmed. Genesis 1:25. You've got lions, giraffes, monkeys, fish, the insect world. But mankind, man and woman, are different. They are essentially different. Genesis 1, and we'll go to verse 25. And God made the beasts of the earth. Okay, statement. That's how they got there. You know, again, compared to the example that I gave before, what about, you know, if this cow was made of stone and found? Well, what would they say? Well, it's been made. What about an insect? What about a fly or something like that in stone? It's obvious design. We'd say that's design. That was made. However, the living creature is far more complex. Well, that wasn't made. That evolved. You see, this is what this civilization inculcates into us subconsciously, and we have to fight it. Again, Genesis 1:25, and God made the beasts of the earth after their kind, and the livestock after their kind, and every creeping creature upon the earth, every creeping creature as well, after their kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 26, and God said, let us. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. John 1:1. But you can't get past that. Us, let us. This is the communication. Again, if we could see a screen of history, and it came up on us, we might one day in the spirit world just see that. This is what happened. This is how I started to, we decided to think about recreating ourselves in the clay image. Very interesting. So God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the fowl of heaven, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that crawls upon the earth. And that is the case today. Verse 27, and God created man to look like what? What? Now, I have to stop. We need to stop before these things. We read these things. And what are we reading? What is it saying? In his own image, in the image of God. And if we look at Revelation 1 like we did last time, that is what Christ looks like today. We cannot hardly imagine it, but we're told. And it's all quiet. Nobody's looking. Do you understand what I'm telling you is what is coming through? His eyes are like flames of fire, face shining like the sun, feet and arms like burnished bronze, polished bronze. This is an entirely different type of existence that we have absolutely no idea of, that we can just only imagine, but we need to hold that vision, even though we don't see it. Now we're going to go to Romans 8. Romans 8. So there's a reason and a purpose for man and woman being created. Romans 8. And we're going to go verse 28. But first, I just want to read 1 Corinthians 2. 1 Corinthians 2 verse 9. We're going to go to Romans 8. I'll read 1 Corinthians. But according as it is written, the eye, the natural eye, has not seen, nor the ear heard, neither has it entered into the heart of man the things which God has prepared for those who love him. And we don't see it. We don't know. We know by the gift of faith that God has given us. Verse 10, but God has revealed them to us by his Spirit. We don't see it, but we know it. It's given to us to know. Faith is the evidence, Hebrews 11, of the things that are not seen. We know, though we don't see it, but we know because God's Spirit imparts that knowledge to us. So I wonder, I ask, and you can think about it, how many was there of us who were with us, who understood these things, and yet they are no more? There are no more. They've gone back. It behooves us to hang on. Romans 8 verse 28. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. Or what is God's purpose in calling us? Verse 29. Because though he did foreknow those whom he did foreknow, he also predestined to be his purpose, conformed to the image of his own Son, that he might be the firstborn amongst many brethren. Okay, let's go to Philippians 3. We go to Philippians 3 verse 21 now. But before I do that, you can go there. Conform to. What does that mean? In the original language that it was written, conform to is sumorphos. Sumorphos is conformed to. And it means having the same form as another. Similar. Conform to. That's what it means. And Philippians 3 and verse 21, we read, who will transform our vile bodies. Can we understand that? I mean, I have to pinch myself. Do you just read past that? Okay, let's read it again. Who will transform our vile bodies? I remember one evangelist one time, he says, if you don't think we're vile or we're rotting away, just not nice, he just lift your arm up and have a whiff. Sorry about that, but that made me laugh. To transform our vile bodies that we may be conformed to his glorious body, according to the inner working of his own power, whereby he is able to subdue all things to himself. And let's go to our next, Romans 12. Romans 12, and we'll start in verse 2. And again, I'll say again, conform to is sumorphos. That's the Greek. That's the word. And it means actually having the same form as another. The same. And we've read in Revelation 1, the form of Christ. Similar to, conform to that same image. And Romans 12 verse 2, we read, do not conform yourselves, that is sumorphos, same thing, to this world, right? But be transformed, and we're going to look at what that means. Be transformed by the renewing. So we have to be transformed. We have to be changed from within, the heart, the mind. Be transformed by the renewing. We have to be renewed. We have to be changed. That's the purpose for which we were made, to be changed in mind and heart. Be renewed by the renewing of your mind, in order that you may prove what is well and pleasing and good, and the perfect will of God. And we're going to go to 1 Corinthians 15 after this, but I'll just warn you, 1 Corinthians 15. It's, but be transformed. Now, that word transform is the Greek word metamorpho, and that means literally or figuratively change, transfigure, transform, change. And I looked up in the Cambridge Dictionary what transform means. That word, it means to change completely the appearance or character of something or someone, especially so that that thing or person is improved. Now let's look at that change. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. This is another scripture that many of us should know by heart. And yet, do we think on it? What about those that fell away, that have gone, that understood this, that had it internalized, and yet forgotten? And that's the whole point of Psalm 78. They forgot his great works. It applies today. There are some that forgot his great works and left the truth. 1 Corinthians 15, if we go to 47, we look at this situation, this change again. The first man is of the earth, 1 Corinthians 15, 47, made of dust, and that's what we are. The second man is the Lord from heaven. As is the one made of dust, excuse me. As is the one made of dust, so also are all those who are made of dust. And as is the heavenly one, so also are all those who are heavenly. And as we have borne, it's difficult to get past this one. What's it saying? As we have borne the image of the one made of dust, flesh, what we are now. It's very easy to look over this. As we have borne the image of the one made of dust, we shall also bear the image of the heavenly one. And, as we read in Romans 12:2, don't be conformed to this world, but metamorpho. We need to be changed by the renewing of our minds. Let's go to Philippians 2. Philippians 2. So we have to be changed in our way of thinking, in our way of conduct. Our minds, our hearts, our desires have to be realigned. And it takes discipline and effort to follow that path as is outlined and revealed by God. Philippians 2 verse 5 also says, let this mind be in you, let this mind be in you, this mind, which was also in Christ Jesus. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the process of trial and challenge. That's our business. That's why we're called. That's why God has made us. And we have the privilege of understanding this, our course of life. And first, if we go to Hebrews 4 and verse 14. Now, we need to remember, Hebrews 4:14, that we all have our strong points. Where one is weak, another is strong, and where one is strong, another is weak. But we all have our strong points, and we do have also weak points, points of weakness, vulnerabilities, and that's what has to be built up. That's where we're strengthened, and we need to strengthen those points. Now, tests reminds me, in a sense, I was thinking about it earlier on. Thinking about my late father. He was a pretty tough cookie, and we had a bakery business, and and what he did was he gave me the banking. Go and do the banking. I was about 19 years old at the time, and one time I went and did the banking, and my wage at that time was phenomenal. It was $56. But what Dad did was he put in $40 extra in the deposit, right, in the cash. And so what happened was, when I went to deposit it, they told me there's $40 extra here. So I took it and I brought it back. And I told him, I said, Dad, it was $40 over. Here's the $40. And he looked at me. I could see he was a little bit, not natural. But you see, he did that. And he would do things like that to see whether I could be trusted. And in a sense, that reminded me about the way God treats us. Hebrews 4 verse 14. When we don't expect it, this is what I'm going to go into. When we don't expect it, we are tested. Hebrews 4:14. Having therefore, this is our example, a great high priest who has passed into the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, who should hold fast the confession of our faith. For we do not have a high priest, an example, who cannot empathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things according to the likeness of our own temptations. He's faced the very same trials in every way that we have. Verse 15. For we do not have a high priest who cannot empathize with our weaknesses, but one who was tempted in all things according to the likeness of our own temptations. Yet he was without sin, without error. Therefore, we should come with boldness to the throne of grace, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Now we go to Acts 13. If we look in Acts 13, I want to say this. If we look in Acts 13, it records that David, King David, was a man after God's own heart, after his very heart, to do the things that were commanded of him. And that's an example for us also. But let's look at some instances in his life. He feared Saul and had to trust God to save his life. King Saul was after his life, because he knew, he could see that David was in favor with God, and he knew and he sensed that he would be the next king. And so he sought to kill him. And so what happened was that David became a fugitive. And we go to 1 Samuel chapter 24. 1 Samuel chapter 24. We'll look at a little bit of focus in the life of David and the trials he went through. And they are sample trials, but they are exemplary of the trials we can go through, how we are tested, and how situations sort of work out. And the question is, which way are you going to go? Which way and what are you going to do? Okay, 1 Samuel, and we go to chapter 24. What do we do when the opportunity comes begging, a big advantage? You know, you can have your problem solved. What are you going to do? When no one's looking, God is looking, God sees, and the stage is set and he's observing. What are you going to do? 1 Samuel 24 from verse 1. And it came to pass when Saul had returned from following the Philistines, they told him, saying, Behold, David is in the wilderness of En-gedi. And Saul took 3,000 chosen, not just chosen men, chosen, not just 3,000 guys, 3,000 capable soldiers, right? Chosen men out of all Israel. You need to understand the emphasis. This guy wanted to kill him. He was out after him, and went to seek David and his men upon the front rocks of the wild goats. And he came to the folds of the flock on the way where there was a cave. Now, it was a difficult way to get into this cave, apparently. All right? And Saul in to cover his feet. Now, cover his feet. The context also suggests that he's there to relieve himself. In other words, he's going to the toilet. And to go to the toilet, he had to take his tunic off, obviously to keep it clean and so on. So we'll read on. And David and his men remained in the side chambers of the cave. Verse 4. Okay, this is talking about David, but it's about you. It's about me. It's about situations that come upon us, and they'll happen. And God is there bringing it about. And the question is, what will you do? Which way will you turn? You can't see me, but I can see you. What are you going to do? Now, you know your difficulties. You know your weak points. You know what you desire. But God lays out the way. He tells us via his commandments. Okay, so, and David, behold, I will deliver, no, let's see, verse 4. And the men of David said to him, okay, let's go back again. And David and his men remained idle inside the chambers of the cave. Okay, he was in there and observing, a little bit humorous. And the men of David said to him, behold, look, this is the day of which the Lord said to you, behold, I will deliver your enemy into your hand. This is it. So that you may do to him, and it shall seem good to you. And David arose and cut off the skirt of Saul's robe secretly. He took his robe off. Again, it doesn't say specifically that he went to the toilet, but you know, he sought a private place and he took his robe off, and you know, by the context, it's obvious what was happening. Verse 5. And it came to pass afterward that David's heart struck him because he had cut off Saul's skirt. He damaged $300 piece of clothing, or $500 piece of clothing, you know. He wrecked his clothing. Verse 6. Now, he passes the test. And he said to his men, far be it from me by the Lord, if I will do this thing to my Lord, the Lord's anointed. He is the Lord's anointed, to stretch forth my hand against him, since he is the anointed of the Lord. Verse 7. And David held back his men with these words and did not, we'll do it, just let us go, come on. No, he stopped them, did not allow them to rise against Saul. And Saul rose up, he rose up. So again, that means he had been swatting down out of the cave and went on his way. Okay, situation number 2. Okay, he made it known to Saul and so on, but the point is he passed the test. Situation number 2 in 1 Samuel 26. go over to 1 Samuel 26, and we'll start in verse 5. Now, again, is there a shortcut that can solve your problem? My problem. This is the application of it. God is not there. He's invisible, but he's inside. He's in the mind and the heart. And the decision is ours. Which way will you go? What are you going to do when a situation presents itself? Which way? What will you do? 1 Samuel 26, and we'll start off in verse 5. Do you justify a situation that's not right and go ahead anyway, contrary to a godly conscience? Because as it says, some who have disregarded that godly conscience have made a shipwreck of their faith. Now we're looking at the conscience, the heart, the mind. 1 Samuel 26 verse 5. Then David arose and came to the place where Saul had pitched. Now he's out after him again with an army. He's out after to kill David, right? David's life, he's living like Robin Hood out in the forest, sleeping on the ground, bathing in cold water if he has to bathe, and all the things that you got to do to stay alive. He's on the run. Okay. He's got it hard. And David saw the place where Saul lay. It'd be pretty tough. I'm tired of this. Wouldn't that thought be in his mind? And David saw the place where Saul lay, and Abner the son of Ner, the captain of his army, and Saul were lying there within the barricade, and the people had pitched it all around him. They were all around him, and they were asleep. And David answered and said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, the brother of Joab, saying, who will go down with me to the camp to Saul? And Abishai said, I will go down with you. Abishai was, in other areas where you read, he was quite a warrior. He was quite skilled, and he was very skilled in killing, that is, quite a strong and skilled soldier. Verse 7, so David and Abishai came to the people by night, and behold, Saul lay sleeping in the tent, and his spear stuck in the ground at his head. But Abner and the people lay around him. And Abishai said to David, okay, here's his commander of the army, and it's natural to him. He says, right, this is it. You've got him. God has given him to you now. Right? So what are you going to do? What are you going to do in this situation? And God has shut up your enemy into your hand this day. Now, please, he says, please. He's begging David. Please, don't you do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. Please, let me strike him with the spear, even to the earth at once, and I will not smite him a second time. He knew exactly where the heart was, what to do. He knew. That's it. He won't even say boo. And David said to Abishai, do not destroy him, for who can stretch forth his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? And David said, as the Lord lives, except the Lord strike him, or his day shall come. This is his thinking. Maybe he's going to die. Maybe God will cause his death, right? Maybe he's going to go into a battle and God will have him die. Maybe that's what's going to happen. But far be it from me, by the Lord, from putting forth my hand against the Lord's anointed. And now, please, take the spear at his head and the cruse of water, and we'll go. And so he took it, and he made a great distance between Saul and himself, and he started to shout and tell him, hey, look, I'm not after you. I could have got you, but I didn't. So, these incidences, right, took place when he was running for his life, desperate, as a Robin Hood, so as to say, out in the forest. Now let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 11 and verse 1. The scene changes. 2 Samuel 11 verse 1. The scene changes, time passed, and here's David living in the castle. living in his house, and he's safe. He's got a lovely bed. He's got a whole bunch of wives, right? And suddenly he gets up one night, and this is what happens. And again, let him who thinks he stand take heed. When everything is okay, he's not out in the forest. When everything is okay with you, at the beginning of our calling, we are diligent. We're alive, awake. But when we gain confidence, strength, knowledge, character, we are in our palace, so to say. Does it stop? Do the difficulties stop then? Or are we even more vulnerable at that time? We're looking at character and situations and circumstances and the development of that character. And what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And we always need to be diligent and alert and awake, understanding that our weaknesses can overtake us at any time. Now, this was another weakness of David. 2 Samuel 11, and we'll start in verse 1. And it came to pass at the turn of the year, at the time the kings go forth to war, David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel. And they destroyed the children of Ammon and circled Rabbah. But David remained at Jerusalem. Okay, no hardships, no Robin Hood forest living, no fear for his life. He was in control. Verse 2. And it came to pass one evening, David arose from his bed and walked upon the roof of the king's house. And from the roof he saw, what did he see? He saw a woman bathing. And the woman was very beautiful to look upon. Again, he had many wives, but this one was better. This one was nicer. These secret desires in the heart are there. It's almost like Adam and Eve. They're there in the garden. They've got all the trees. They've got all the food, good for food. But what happens? What is the strategy of the enemy? For some reason, he focuses, that is the prince of the power of the air. Satan is well and alive on this earth and unseen. What happens? He says, that tree is going to be the best. This woman is better than all of them. That's the message. And verse 3, a lack of trouble in David's life got him into trouble. That's a point. Think about it. A lack of trouble in my life can get me into trouble. Let's put the principle that way and internalize it that way. A lack of trouble in your life could cause trouble for you. Interesting. It's an interesting twist. Verse 3, and David sent and asked about the woman, and one said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? The wife of Uriah, she's married, and she must have looked at him as well and, given him another pose, perhaps. I mean, what excited him? Was it her look? Was it the way she moved? Was it the fact that she did not cover herself? When the adversary, the spiritual adversary, is involved, things happen. Things happen. And David sent messages and took her. He's only a Hittite. He's a Gentile. He was a faithful soldier, though. He's a Gentile. And besides, it was his wife. And so then followed an ugly scene. He took her and he had sex with her. And then she came back and she said, I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. So then he ended up killing her husband with the sword of the enemy. And it was he failed miserably. tried the hook, winked the husband. Oh, it was terrible. I hate reading about it. Anyway, let's go to 1 Corinthians 10. 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 11. So the point is, don't relax. Be on guard. Never stop. Never not be diligent. Know that if you've overcome difficulties, problems, and so on, they can suddenly come back again. 1 Corinthians 10 verse 11. Now we look at how Israel failed and how there were problems there and they fell. But here we'll join in verse 11. Now all these things happened to them as examples, and indeed the life of David is an example for you, and it's an example for me. It's an example for us. As examples, and were written for our admonition, on whom the ends of the ages are coming. The ends of the ages. This is it. Christ has come. God has begun his spiritual creation, and there are lessons that we have to take to heart, not to fall asleep. Therefore, let the one who thinks he stands, he's the principle, take heed lest he falls. You know, when you know it, when you've grown, especially, not when you're really fighting and you're out there in the forest, having to live day by day and uncomfortable. Now that you're comfortable, now that I'm comfortable, now that we are stronger spiritually and more knowledgeable, well, this is the warning for you, and this is the warning for me when you're there, right? Therefore, let the one who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. And let's take heed of the promise in verse 13, a promise to hang on to. No temptation has come upon you. It's only being lazy. Take your hands off the steering wheel, and what happened? You've got a disaster. While you've got it on the steering wheel and looking, keep awake and drive your life. Will not permit you to be tempted beyond what you are able to bear. You can bear it. It's measured. Jeremiah 17:10, God weighs the heart, but he won't give you too much that you can't take it. But with the temptation, he will make a way of escape so that you may be able to bear it. And if we look at Proverbs 20 and verse 13, Proverbs 20 and verse 13. Now, I know of a situation where a member was told by his wife, if you go on with these people this way, believing this, we're finished. And it tore the heart out of him, and they were finished. It was tough, but he hung on. And I know of another member who we would go to service together. We were close friends, and his wife left him, and he left the truth. Gone by the wayside. I don't know where he is. Just gone. Nowhere. He's not on the radar sites. You know, it's real. It's very real. These difficulties are very real. And I know I talk about my situation. I went through a 40-year trial in a business that I didn't want to be in. My dad had a lot of confidence in me and put me on the spot. And finally, when I was delivered, but I had to endure. I had to stay with it. I was put with my back to the wall a lot of times. And what do I do? What do we do? You have to stay alive. Proverbs 20, verse 13. Do not love sleep. Here's a principle, a spiritual principle. Stay awake while you're driving. Stay awake. Do not love sleep, lest you come to poverty, spiritual poverty. The principle. But open your eyes and you'll be satisfied with bread. Now let's turn to James 1, and I'll go into the conclusion here. James 1, verse 2. It says, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you are beset by various trials, knowing that the testing Testing. It's got to happen. It's not if, it's when. And it's not done, finished. It will continue. We have to be awake, alert. The testing will continue. Count it all for joy, my brethren, when you are beset by various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And that's one part of our character that needs to be inculcated with our effort. But let endurance have its perfect work, so that you may be perfect and complete, not lacking in anything. And then verse 12, we go to verse 12. Blessed is the man who endures trials. Trials, trials, not a trial, trials. They don't just stop, they keep coming. Because after he has been proved, tested, proved, like the oxen that were taken out, 5 yoke of oxen, he had to prove to see whether it will do what they'll do, whether they will move and plow evenly and so on. Well, you are proved, you are tested, you are put to the test. He shall receive a crown of life. She shall receive a crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. And that's how you prove your love. You stay steadfast. But each one is tempted when he's drawn away and is enticed by his own lust, exactly as we went through those examples. Now let's go to Hebrews 12. Hebrews 12, and we'll finish off with Hebrews 12. We'll just go through it. Hebrews 12, and we'll begin with verse 2. Having our minds fixed on Jesus, the beginner and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that lay ahead of him, joy? Oh, do we look at trials as joy? The joy that lay ahead of him, and he knew from the beginning, from the foundation of the world, he knew from the time when Adam and Eve went astray, that was going to have to happen. It was preordained. Ahead of him endured the cross, although he despised the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Now meditate deeply on him who endured. He sweated sweats of blood, as it were. That's how hard it was. That's how great was his endurance. What an example for you. What an example for me. What an example for us. He endured against such great hostility of sinners against himself, so that you do not become weary and faint in your minds. There it is. Consider, you've got an example. Keep it in your mind. Look at Psalm 78. Don't forget like they did. Israel forgot. Don't you forget. I can't forget. None of us can forget. That is deadly. That's like taking your hands off the steering wheel and just driving along. You're not invincible. We're not invincible. You have not yet resisted to the point of losing blood in your struggle against sin. And you've already forgotten the admonition that he addresses. This is the warmth, the love, the embracing, the connection. As sons, my son, do not despise the chastening of the Lord, nor grow weary. And that's what happens. Grow weary of being reproved by him. Correction. For whom the Lord loves, he chastens, and he severely disciplines. Severely. It says severely. If you're really in it, you're really copying it. He severely disciplines every son whom he receives. So if you're disciplined, you're received, you're embraced, you're accepted. Verse 7, if you endure chastening, God is dealing you as a father with his sons. And sons and daughters is what it means. For who is the son whom the father does not chasten? I mean, if your child does something stupid, you're not going to correct them. If they're playing with knives or whatever, you're not going to say, hey. Verse 8, but if you are without chastisement, of which all are partake, everyone is tried. Don't think it's strange. Oh, poor me. No, everyone is a partaker of it. Then you are bastards and not sons, illegitimate, Furthermore, we had our fleshly fathers who chastened us and were respected then. That logically, should we not all more willingly be subject to the Father of spirits and live forever? Remember, if you would enter life, this is not life. We have to enter life. All right, well, I'm going to move on here to verse 12. Here's the admonition to us. Therefore, lift up the hands that are hanging down. When it gets difficult, when it gets hard, when you think, I'm going nowhere, this is too hard. Well, lift up the hands that are hanging down and receive and revive the weakened knees. Daily prayer, daily study, daily meditating, daily, and make straight paths. That's how you do it. That's how you make straight paths for your feet. Otherwise, what is lame is turned aside. What's lame will go out of joint. You're done. That's what you got to do, day by day by day. But let it rather be healed. And so I'll conclude. I'll conclude by saying, let's see, we go to verse 16. Lest there be any fornicator or godless person as Esau, who for one meal, for a bowl of soup, right, sold his birthright. You know, he gave it all away because he was hungry at that time. Now that's when we have to be strong. When we're weak, that's what determines our strength. That's what determines your determination to stand when you're weakest. That's the point. Now, verse 17 says, because you also know that afterwards, when he wished to inherit the blessing, he was rejected, and he found no room for repentance, although he sought it earnestly with tears. Now, you know what the equivalent is, don't you? The equivalent is this. Matthew 8 and verse 12. The equivalent is the weeping and the gnashing of teeth. Matthew 8 verse 12. This is where we do not want to be. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast into the children of the kingdom. They were children of the kingdom. They had it. It was given to them. But the children of the kingdom shall be cast into outer darkness, and there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. You know, there are 6 mentions in the New Testament of weeping and gnashing of teeth. That's a warning to us. So, in conclusion, a third of the angelic kingdom failed. Matthew 25 tells us that 50-50, half of the virgins were wise and half were foolish. Half made it and half did not make it. Interesting. Is that really the rate? 50% will make it and 50% won't? So what I say in conclusion is stay awake. Be diligent. Do not be caught off guard no matter what. That is your mandate. And may the time come for you personally, when you hear the words of Matthew 25:23, and I'll read them to you to conclude. His Lord said to him, well done, good and faithful servant, because you were faithful in a few things, and they are few things really. I will set you over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord.